So, thank you for coming.
Yes.
Let's start off with a very simple question. Why did you get started in FFA, or how did you get started? Were you born into it by you were a generational farmer, or were you kind of pushed into it?
Okay, so I am a third generation farmer, but my father had went to college to be an ag teacher, and taught for a couple of years in Bowling Green.
Hey.
And came back home and ended up working for Farm Credit and getting into finance. So he ended up being a banker when I was a kid. But his big thing was, I want you to take it as a freshman. If you don't like it, you don't have to take it anymore. And I was reluctant. I was because I was playing sports and all that. And farming was the work that I didn't want to do. Right?
Yeah.
It was what I spent my whole summers doing. So anyway, so I took the class. And of course, I loved it, and I got a committee chair, so therefore I had to take it my sophomore year, and then you got so it just kind of snowballed, and honestly, I didn't take it super duper serious in high school, and I was regional president, which is amazing because I just kind of phoned it in, and then probably the first and only thing that I've done that I regret was I was going to run for state office. And I was preparing for that and doing all the work for that. And I started questioning it, whether I wanted to do it. And my ag teacher was well, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And looking back, it's not his fault, but I wish he'd been just do it.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, the worst thing that happened is you don't get it. And that's kind of what you're telling me you're worried about. So, but now he was just okay, if you don't want to do it, then let's not waste our time. And I was okay. And so I didn't. But I ended up working, but kind of, that changed the course for me, because instead of becoming a state officer and going that route, I ended up working here at camp as just a guy weed eating and mowing, right? I did that in the summers, and through that I met all these ag teachers that are here all the time, and got to know them and build relationships. And as I worked here for 3 or 4 years, the director then started, he's why don't you teach this class, or why don't you come be an intern at convention? And so when it came down to what do I want to be, all of my resources and all of my connections and all the people that could give me references were FFA people, and my dad had been an ag teacher, so it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. So I majored in ag and taught for about 17 years.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here, which that's this job came open a couple times while I was teaching, and it was a little bit of a pay cut. So, and I was living other places, and I was I don't really want to go home. But when I was at Meade County, which are here this week at camp, I play music also, so in those two.
You're a very good singer.
Thank you.
Because I was here in middle school camp, and I remember at the end you were, I forgot what song you were singing, but you were singing, and it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, so those two careers were kind of growing simultaneously. I was living
dual lives.
Yeah, but the music stuff started getting real busy, and I had a really great administrator and a superintendent at Meade County let me take a year off to just do music full time. Well, that turned into 4 or 5 years. And then right before COVID, this job came open again, and I was you know what? This is a good opportunity for me to get back into FFA and ag teaching. So I did that. I was still playing music, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
It was kind of serendipity. This was a job I always wanted, and if I hadn't have taken it then, I'd have been in trouble.
Yeah, real big trouble.
There was no shows to be played during that time. So this is our summer 6. So
I'd say you're doing a pretty good job at it.
I appreciate it. But what happens here at camp? I feel there's a couple of pivotal things in your FFA career. Maybe it's saying the creed when you're a freshman when you don't want to do it. And you get through it, right? Then maybe it's going to national convention and seeing FFA on a broader stage. But I think camp, especially the way we're doing it now, is that moment where you see other people who are like you, with the common thread, where you're trying to get something more from it. Like you're kind of trying to, like, to extract all the opportunity from what FFA can do. And that doesn't necessarily happen at a chapter level when you got your whole membership. It needs to be with people who are like you and like-minded. And so for me, camp has always been that place that kind of like, it can, for some people it's fun, but I think for most people it is that springboard to whatever that next leadership thing is.
Which means something, right?
Yeah.
When the state president talks about how he was like, whoa, I want to become a state officer.
You look around and you
it's
go,
like,
I could do this.
yeah, and that means something.
Yeah.
And that means to maybe not everyone here. Some people are here and may not take it seriously.
Well, and how cool is it for you all to be here this week where you have the state
president,
the former state president, the newly installed state president, and the national president. And and you look at them, you go, they did the same stuff I did.
I did.
Yeah.
And all these people from all these different walks of life in these pretty big positions all talk about fondly about FFA, Kentucky FFA, and this camp.
Yeah.
And that's really something special, because I'll be honest, when I first heard about it in between 7th and 8th grade, I was like,
I don't want to do that.
I didn't want to do it, because
Yeah.
it's like, I don't want to spend entire my summer in who knows where, Western Kentucky.
And these stinky old cabins with this crazy guy with neon tennis shoes.
And it ended up being that year, 7th grade, I think is going to be, at least in my FA career, however long that is. I hope it's very long. That's the ideal.
Yeah.
Because I love ag, I love FFA, but I think 7th grade year is going to be a year that lives in my mind forever, because that's the year I first ever went to National Convention. That was the year I truly fell in love with FFA.
You did all the stuff.
I did the stuff, and that was also between 7th and 8th grade during the summer. My advisor, Mr. B, who was my favorite teacher of all time, he walked up to me at this camp during the first ever chapter meeting and said, "You're going to be our FFA president," out of nowhere. And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you go to all the meetings, you do all the stuff I ask, you're responsible, you haven't done anything dumb yet."
He knighted you.
Pretty much. And then I was also the president for 8th grade because no one else wanted to do it or he could do it properly. And
Right.
I was like, whoa, people see something in me. I have to start acting right.
Well, yeah, you do kind of you start holding yourself accountable for the expectations other people have of you. And I don't, sports can do that. The classroom education situations can do that. Those other teachers can do that. But I think there's a genuineness. It really doesn't have anything to do with ag, but for some reason I only see it in ag teachers where they really just want you to be successful, and this just happens to be a perfect vehicle to do those things. Because I don't know what your ag background is, but to me it really doesn't matter.
Because I'm here.
Yeah, and you can just have an appreciation for it and never have touched a tobacco plant or a cow or whatever, and it can still do the same thing for you that it can do for a kid that is a fourth generation
farmer. Yeah, and my ag background is kind of lackluster, I guess, in a bit of a way, because my dad's father, he lived on a farm, and his father lived on a farm, so he was like a 6th generational farmer or something absurd, because they've been here in America since forever.
Yeah.
And then my grandfather got a job in IT, and he worked there for 50 years, from 1971 to 2021. He loved it. And then my dad also works in IT, so I think, and then on my mom's side, they're immigrants from Canada and Maine and that area, so ag was never really a part of my life until...
Not because they didn't love it, but just
because I was never really exposed to it.
Way.
Yeah. And I've kind of been exposed to ag in a different way, because my grandmother, on my mom's side, she lives on a dairy farm. She lives on a dairy cattle farm. And they also used to have horses, but they got too expensive,
Yes.
as horses do
Yeah.
very
'Cause
often.
you can't eat them.
Can't eat
At
them.
least not here.
Yeah.
Not in America.
And I was like, petting I was really young, like 5. I was petting the cows, and I never really looked back on like that memories of me being in my grandmother's like open field as formative, or like until in May when I went back to her farm to hang out with her and hang out with her old little poodle dog. This is a cute little dog, and I went out and there was just a bunch of cows grazing. It's like, huh.
It triggered that memory, and you're like, maybe this is what started.
Maybe this is what started it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
So I'm asking you questions. So what's your plan?